I'm here today with Martin Kavanagh to talk about calf housing. Martin.
Hi Cara.
In your experience, there's been lots of it. What are the common issues you would see with calf housing?
Yeah, it's universal, Cara. It's trying to keep beds dry, keep the moisture out of the house, keep our calves, particularly when they're young, we want to keep them warm, so we've got to keep them out of drafts, and we've got to compensate that with getting enough air in. So a lot of the issues that we find in new built houses in Ireland, they're built from concrete and steel, and they're quite large. So the airspace can be quite cold in those early months. It can be often hard to get the moisture out and drain them and clean them well. So sometimes we've supersized, and that's created problems for our baby calves, keeping them warm and keeping them draft free.
Okay, because ideally, calves want to be at a temperature of 15 degrees plus.
Yeah, if we look at our baby calves, say under 3 weeks of age, they like to nest in straw or be in a warm area between 15 and 25, they'll grow at their best. And that's shocking to a lot of people, but that's when if we drop below those temperatures, it's going to be a real challenge for that calf's immune system. And then we are at a higher risk of getting diseases such as scar and pneumonia. So keeping them warm and balancing that with enough air is a challenge.
It's about 5 degrees here today, it's definitely not 15.
Yeah, we certainly feel it. Just standing here, we feel that cold and chill. And the minute we get some wind speed or higher wind coming from the openings in the shed, we're going to get those wind chill factors on calves, which is going to drive the temperature further down. So we need more compensation for that within the shed.
So Martin, when we're talking about bedding, what are the important things?
Yeah, bedding receives a lot of attention because it requires a lot of work to keep it right. And we got to understand, why are we using a bedded system for calves? We want to keep them warm and dry. So it's key for these young calves in particular that they're lying on a dry surface. That again reduces the wind chill and makes they're much more able to cope with a lower temperature. So we'd like to keep them nesting in a bed. When I talk about nesting, it's straw coming up above their knees and their elbows as such when they're lying in straw. So we need a deep bed. And if we look in here, we got this really deep bed of straw this farmer has nicely prepared for us. And that means a calf can get down into that and nest. We often do this test. People say, to kneel down in the bedding, and we come up with wet knees, and that's fine to a point. But this is where I get the fork. And as a vet or a consultant coming in, we'll always dig down into the bed. And for a farmer to decide when to clean a bed out, it really makes sense to dig into that bed and have a look at that top surface, okay, and see how quickly do we get to the wet part. So if we're getting to that wet part within 5 or 6 centimetres, we're going to need another layer of bedding, or we need to do something about the bedding as such.
This is a deep straw pen. Are there other alternatives? Straw is expensive. What are our other alternatives?
And when we're looking at the volume of straw that we got to put under calves, it can be extremely expensive to do it. But if we look at these other bedding systems, so wood chip, peat and so on, if calves sit on top of these, they don't really nest. So very young calves find it a challenge. But these can be very useful as an underlayer for drainage. So we can use wood chip with straw on top, or we use peat with straw on top, and that provides us a nesting opportunity. I think as calves get older, when we hit into that 5-6 week point, they're becoming functional ruminants, generating a lot of their own heat. I've no problem with them sitting on the bed, they're eating a lot more. But those young guys under 4 weeks, they're challenged if they're sitting on top of the bed.
So straw is king for young calves?
Straw is king for young calves. You need to put that into your budget if you're really looking to grow these calves well and avoid these pneumonia shocks. Absolutely, we need some straw.
Okay, because cold stress can be a real issue.
If we can avoid cold stress, it means the calves can use the food they're given to grow and to manage their immune system, as against using the food they're given to keep themselves warm. And if they're doing that, their immune system comes under pressure. And in these large concrete sheds we build in Ireland with high wind speeds coming at the sides of them, that's one of our biggest risks, is cold stress in calves.
So Martin, we talk about temperature in calf houses. It is cold here today.
It is cold here today, and when we really look at temperature in Ireland, from January right up to May, the temperature fluctuation can be significant, and the average daily temperature could be below 10 degrees. So obviously we're going to have our super balmy spring days, which are ideal, but we will have those cold nights. Often use a max min thermometer. These are cheap, you can get them off the internet, but even today it's reading at the moment that our lowest temperature was there this morning around 5 degrees. We're around 7 degrees now, and once we're under that 10 degrees piece, our calves are going to start getting significantly challenged. 15 to 25 is ideal for these young baby calves, but I really look at that 10 degree. If we go under 10 degrees for a prolonged period of time inside in a shed, those calves are going to get challenged in terms of their immune system.
And am I right in saying, because of the design of calf sheds, that it can actually often be colder inside a calf shed than even outside?
Yeah, this is the crazy thing. I think we've designed sheds on the basis of stack effect working. Animals inside the shed generating enough heat to drive air out the top, and air comes in the sides. In these bigger sheds that we have for calves now, that just does not work. It'll work in a small shed with a very, very high pitch on the roof with a high density of calves in there. But realistically, in these big sheds, it's not working. So the only moving part in most sheds is the door. So the wind can blow in. If it's blowing in the side, it will add wind chill, and those calves are constantly getting colder. So if the inside of the shed is cold, you'll actually even get downdraft into that shed to create a worse problem.
Okay, and because calves, I mean, they're only small, so they really don't create a lot of heat.
Yeah, up to that 3-4 week point, until they're eating enough solid food. And like, they are ruminants, so once we get them to the ruminant stage, they're starting to generate a lot of their own heat from their rumen, and they do a lot better. They can handle it better because of the fermentation. But up to that, they're milk fed, so they're pre-ruminant animals, and they're very dependent on the temperature of the environment to regulate their own temperature.
Okay, so what can we do? How can we make it cozier for them?
Cozier for them. I mean, first of all, we need to be sensible. How much are you going to invest in a calf shed? And not all calf sheds are cold, so the thermometer will give you a very good idea. The second thing is, can we warm them as young calves? So it could be heating lamps when they're very, very young in certain areas. We could certainly using jackets will help those young calves up to 3 weeks of age and so on, particularly calves in low body weight calves, crossbreds and so on. Also, when we're looking at calf pens, if we can use canopies to protect them from draft, it'll help a lot, as well as the deep bedding, deep dry bedding and a dry shed. More water and moisture that's inside in a shed, the colder that shed is going to be.
Okay, so to keep it dry is really important, and even in a big calf shed, if we can within pens create, I suppose, small cocoons, microenvironments that will keep them warm.
Yeah, it's a real nice word, microenvironment, and we got to think about what that means. So sometimes in those big sheds, big open pens with the young calves, they may actually have a hutch in the pen. So you'll find that those calves will make their way there, they'll get in out of the worst of the draft within that big shed. And then the other part of the shed can have older calves in it without a hutch, so that they're able to manage better. So we need to think about each group of calves at their age, what we can achieve with them.
We all know this from experiencing cold ourselves. If you're cold, maybe feed more.
Yeah, and I think that nutrition piece is really important. And a general rule, if that temperature is dropping below 10 degrees, 10 degrees down to 0 degrees, I'm going to start feeding about 10% more in that diet. So general rule of thumb, if you think it's going to get cold, you're going to get those really high winds, the temperature is dropping, get another litre into the system, or lift the concentration of your milk powder and give those calves a bit more energy.